You didn't get married to get divorced, but that's the path that your marriage took. And so now you're at a crossroads in life full of uncertainty and pain, wondering, where do I go from here? After such a significant life change, the 8th house in your natal chart can be a guiding light on your path to certainty and healing. And so in this video, I'm going to explain how you can use the energy of the 8th house in your natal chart to help you process your emotions, heal old wounds, and prepare for more meaningful connections in the future. So grab your notebook and something to write with, because you're going to want to take notes so that you can reference this information later on, okay? And so if you are new to me or to the channel, hello and welcome. My name is Katrice and I am the Natal Chart Navigator. And I teach newly divorced women how to use their natal chart to heal and move through the 6 stages of divorce easier and with more grace. And so for those who are returning to the channel, hello and welcome back. All right, so let's jump into it. So the 8th house in astrology is often referred to as the house of death, transformation, rebirth, and shared resources. And it is associated with deep, intense experiences and represents the cycles of life, death, and regeneration, okay? And so using the 8th house's energy to aid in transformation, healing, and intimacy and rebuilding trust after divorce involves tapping into its deeper themes of renewal, emotional depth, and vulnerability. These are all things that can be hard to express, and then after a relationship has died or is over, we close that stuff up and we don't want to open it up again because of fear of getting hurt again, okay? But here's how you can use the energy of the 8th house to guide you through this process, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to embrace your emotional vulnerability, okay? And so the 8th house encourages deep emotional healing. But in order to do this, it requires allowing yourself to feel vulnerable and to explore the emotional layers you may have been avoiding. And so after a divorce, you may be carrying grief, anger, or even guilt, or all of the above. And so these emotions need to be processed before you can truly transform. And so you can use the 8th house's energy to identify and release old emotional patterns and to allow yourself to feel deeply, okay? So the 8th house it governs where emotional baggage can reside. So unconscious emotional baggage. And so you want to take the time to reflect on what emotional patterns you've carried through your marriage and how they might be affecting your current state. So journaling, meditation, and therapy can help you to uncover these layers, okay? Now next, you want to give yourself permission to fully experience these emotions that arise. Any grief, any anger, any fear, or relief, okay? You might actually be relieved that you are no longer married. I was very relieved once, even though I was hurting. I was still relieved that I did not have to deal with it. Everything that I had to deal with, I didn't have to deal with that anymore. And so by sitting with these feelings, you create space for healing and transformation. And this can be especially helpful in the aftermath of a divorce, where you may be holding onto a lot of emotional residue, okay? All right, now number 2, the next thing. You want to let go of the old self and embrace transformation. Now, one of the key lessons of the 8th house is the process of transformation, especially after a major life shift like divorce. Now, the eighth house represents a shedding of old layers, which can be painful, but ultimately empowering. Okay? And the eighth house also teaches us that healing begins when we let go of the past, which can be hard to do. Okay? Now, divorce is a major ending, and you may have formed attachments not just to your partner, but also to your identity within the marriage. Okay? Now, in the video that was recently posted, the title is 4 Reasons You Struggle to Accept Your Divorce. I discussed this in length of how, we as women, we really get attached to the identity of wife. Okay? And so if you haven't watched that video, I do recommend that after this video, you go and watch that video. Okay? It will really help you to understand how to let go of the wife identity. Okay? I'm going to put the link in the description of this video, but go and check that out. Wife is a title. Okay? It's not an identity. Okay, so it breaks that down in detail. Okay, but now is the time for you to release those attachments and redefine exactly who you are moving forward. Okay, all right, so you want to take the time to honor what the relationship gave you, but you also want to acknowledge what you need to let go of. And so you can write about, in your journal, what no longer serves you, and release it. Okay, or you can just write it on a piece of paper, and then if you want to burn that paper afterwards, symbolic of you, clearing out the old, you can. So whether that's memories, resentment, or limiting beliefs about yourself, and you understand that healing takes time, and that this period is essential for your growth. And I know, when you say healing, when you hear me say healing takes time, especially if it's been, say, like a year or so since your divorce, and you're like, okay, how much healing do I have to do? How long does this take, right? And you may be frustrated because you're like, I just want to be over with it. I just want to be done. And I get that, because I was in that space as well. But you do not want to rush the process, because if you rush the process and try to, jump back into a relationship, you may find somebody who, helps you, and they're good for you, and they help you to continue on with the process, and it may speed up your process. However, you could also find somebody who could, is not good for you, and they could just be the same person that you just divorced, but in a different body, and it throws your healing off, right? And it could sink you further than where you were, and so you want to be careful of that. Okay, so you don't want to rush the healing process. Okay, instead you want to allow yourself to evolve naturally, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Okay, and so you have the opportunity to undergo a reinvention, and so that's what I want you to think of your divorce journey as, right? And so in the comments, I want you to write, I am reinventing myself. Okay, and the first thing you do that by is you can start by identifying new goals, new passions, and values that align with the person that you want to become. Okay, after you go through something very traumatic, you have to heal through that trauma. Okay, and the 8th house is the perfect energy to help you to do that, because the 8th house is all about trauma as well. Okay, it's a very deep house emotionally, and write out, who do I want to be, right? who do I see myself as now? Okay? And not from your hurt self, but imagine your healed self. Okay? Now, this rebirth could involve finding a new career path. This would be a great time to find a new career, whether, you have to find it out of necessity, or, you just want to switch careers. Exploring new hobbies that you may have wanted to try, but you didn't have the time to, or reconnecting with parts of yourself that you neglected through the marriage. There were things that I would not do, stopped hanging out with, friends as much, and, because I became a wife. And so, I felt like there were certain things that I did before marriage that I couldn't do because now I'm a wife. And so, once we got divorced, and, it was like, okay, so who am I now? It took a minute, but, slowly I began to, reconnect to things that I liked to do. And I stopped doing things that I really didn't like to do, but I did them out of what I felt like a wife was supposed to do. Okay? And so let me know in the comments, what new identity are you crafting post-divorce? Who do you want to be, right? It's like, how when little kids and they say, who you want to be when you grow up? Okay? Who do you want to be now? Who is it that you get to be, right? All right. And so the third thing is I'm going to focus on intimacy and rebuilding trust. Okay, and so the 8th house governs deep emotional intimacy. And so after a divorce, you may feel hesitant to open up again or struggle with trust. And using the 8th house's energy, you can heal your approach to intimacy and build a healthier relationship with yourself and others. This one is big. This is big, because after you get out of a relationship, a marriage, especially if it was toxic, you may start thinking back over all of your relationships, and you might be like, man, I've really been in some toxic relationships. And you may not trust yourself to be able to choose a partner who is not toxic, okay? But what you have to understand is that, and this may sound mean, but it's the truth, because we are all mirrors. The toxicity is within you. And so you are attracting that toxicity. Now, you may not be toxic yourself, but you may be somebody who tolerates toxicity because that's how you were raised. Especially if you're empathic, if you're deeply empathic, you attract people who are toxic because it's like you're a hospital. And so this is where, boundaries are very important. Boundaries are very important. And you have to learn, you have to trust yourself. You have to learn how to trust your decisions when it comes to love, when it comes to, picking a partner. And so this is why I am a very big proponent, a very big advocate for not rushing into a new relationship after divorce. Giving yourself time to heal. There is no time frame. I don't give time frames. I used to think, maybe a year or two, but I don't give time frames because everybody's different. Everybody is energetically different, and everybody heals at different intervals and things of that nature. But I just I don't feel like you should rush right into a relationship. The quickest way to get over a man is to get under a new one. And I don't believe that. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I just personally don't subscribe to that. And I think that, you have to give yourself time to evaluate the relationship that you just came out of, and to figure out what went right, what went wrong. Because what went right, obviously you want to take that into the next relationship. But what went wrong, you do not. And so you need to figure out what went wrong and what was your part in how it went wrong. Because it's not always just about what they did to us, okay? What he did to me, okay? What did you do as well? How did you facilitate that? Because you had a part to play in it as well. Because nobody can do anything to you unless you allow them to do it to you. And so you have to, you really have to take time to figure out all of that, and then learn how to trust yourself again, okay? Before you dive into a new relationship, it is very important for you to rebuild intimacy with yourself. This means acknowledging your own needs, desires, and boundaries, and reflect on the kind of emotional connection you want to have moving forward, and to practice self-compassion, okay? This is why it's so important for women to love on themselves, date themselves, do all of these things to themselves, because then you know how it feels. You know how it feels, and it feels great. And when you get into and start dating, you know how you want to be treated. And if they're not treating you the way that you know you want to feel, they ain't the one. And if you got to beg and plead and do all this extra, child, no, it ain't even worth it. It's not worth it. Trust can take a significant hit during divorce. Like it, and I'm speaking from experience, it really does. Especially if there was betrayal involved. And so the 8th house invites you to work on rebuilding trust, starting with small steps. And so you can do this through things like making and keeping promises to yourself, and slowly opening up to others as your heart heals. Trust does not happen overnight, but with consistent effort, you can rebuild trust within yourself, okay? All right, so the next thing is you want to address issues of power and control, because the 8th house touches on power dynamics, both within ourselves and in relationships, okay? And so divorce can also trigger issues around power and control. You see this all the time in the divorce proceedings, especially when there are a lot of assets involved or children are involved. And so divorce, and whether you're feeling powerless or seeking to gain control, you have to understand that the influence on this house, on those dynamics, can help you approach your healing with more clarity. Now, the sign that is on this house plays a lot into this as well, okay? And if you have any planets, depending on what planets are in this house, as well, plays a lot into this. If you have a sign like Pisces on the 8th house, and you're dealing with somebody who, say, has like Aries on the 8th house, the power dynamics can be off. And you may, like during the divorce proceedings, especially when it comes to kids, there may be a lot of the children could be used as pawns, right? And so you have to pay, this is something that the 8th house governs, that you really, and it could leave you very, very drained. Especially if you have like water on this, like Pisces, for sure. Okay. And so after a divorce, it's very common to feel disempowered, especially if the relationship involved manipulation or control. The 8th house energy invites you to reclaim your power, and not just over others, but more over your own life, because you may have given your power away in the marriage. Okay. And so this definitely includes setting strong boundaries, taking charge of your finances, and learning to trust yourself again. Okay. Now, if your marriage was marked by power struggles, now is the time to examine how those struggles influenced your self-worth, and heal any lingering feelings of inadequacy or anger related to control by recognizing your worth and reclaiming your autonomy. Okay. That's a really, really big one. Okay. All right. And so then the last thing is healing through shared resources and support. Okay. Now the 8th house also it's a money house, and it's shared resources, but this extends beyond money, and it also includes emotional support, therapy, and group healing. And so it's important for you not to isolate yourself during this time. It can be very hard for you not to isolate, especially depending on the sign that's on your 4th house, right? Because the 4th house, 8th house, and 12th house, these are the healing houses. These are the emotional houses. And so if you have water on the 4th house, water energy can be very it's introverted. It can be very introverted energy. And so if you have, say, Scorpio on the 4th house, then you may want to retreat, or especially if you have Cancer on the 4th house. Cancer is the crab, so they go into their shell and they retreat. And so, it's important for you not to isolate, though, because isolation can become a problem, right? And when I have a video that I'm going to release on the stages, the 6 stages of divorce, where I talk about one of the stages is depression, and isolation can lead to depression. So you're going to want to really check that out. But you're going to want to seek out therapy or support groups. Okay. Now, I'm not a big fan of support groups, but they have their place. Okay. And healing from a divorce often requires support from others. The reason I'm not a big fan of support groups is because sometimes the support group can become toxic. Okay. When I first got diagnosed with the autoimmune disease, so I have autoimmune disease. I've diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called scleroderma, but I was initially diagnosed with lupus. I was misdiagnosed with lupus, and I was in when I first got diagnosed back in 2015. I was in quite a few support groups online on Facebook. And some of them were like really amazing. I was in one, the Real Housewives of Lupus, and I'm still in it, but I just don't go in there that often. But really amazing group, really supportive, and people share things that they do to cope with the disease and things of that nature. It's a really great group. But some of them were the most toxic things I had ever experienced. And it's like people would come in and they would share things that they were doing, and they were hopeful, and and some of the people in there were they would say some of the most negative and toxic things. And I just used to be like, ain't this supposed to be a support group? We're supposed to be supporting each other. Y'all in here tearing each other down because, this person decided that they don't want to always just talk about being sick. They want to talk about, happy things. And all you want to talk about is being sick and how bad you feel. And, so, I'm not saying that support groups are bad, because there are very good support groups out there. I've experienced good support groups, but I've also experienced bad, toxic ones. So you have to be mindful of what the support groups. As far as divorce groups, I was in a few, but I didn't want to sit around talking about my ex all day and what he did to me and all of that. Like, I was over it. Like, I had already experienced it. I didn't want to keep talking about it. So, not saying that there aren't any good support groups out there. But if you're going to get into a support group, I would encourage you to get into a support group where it's forward thinking. It's not sitting around ruminating and stewing in what happened. You may tell your story, and then, that's fine, but you don't constantly keep just talking about it, because it keeps you there. Okay. You want to find places where you can move forward. Like the community here that we're growing here on the channel. This is a community of support. Okay. And you can, if you want to talk about what you're currently experiencing on your divorce recovery, this channel and community is great for that. Okay. To talk about what you're experiencing, and to get tips and things on how to help you to work through it and move forward. Those are the type of support groups you want. You don't want support groups where they're just bashing, saying all men are bad and all this, that, then the third, because that's not going to help you. Okay. It's not going to help you. Whether you believe that or not isn't the point. The point is you want to be in spaces where they can help and uplift you to move forward, right? But the 8th house energy can guide you to seek out counselors, support groups, or even trusted friends and family members who can help you to process the experience. You might also want to consider group therapy or other healing modalities that allow for deep emotional work. Okay. You want to always just be forward thinking when you are looking at any type of therapy or anything to help you to process your divorce. Okay. I know that was kind of a tangent, but I just had to get that out there because I'm really keen and on people being forward focused, okay, and not just stewing in what happened to me. Okay. We all go through the pity party on the divorce recovery, especially in the beginning. And that's okay. That's normal. It's a part of the process. It's a part of you healing because you have to get it out, right? But if 10 years later, you're still talking about what happened to you, then that is resentment, that is brewing, that is stewing. That's not forward movement, and it's stunning your growth, right? It's like the thing where you drink the poison and you're expecting the other person to die. It's not going to happen. You're the one who's slowly dying because you haven't decided to move past it. Okay. All right. So you want to engage in practices that nurture your body, mind, and spirit. So things like energy healing, meditation, astrology, or yoga can help you to integrate the transformation that you're going through. And these practices can bring you closer to the spiritual aspect of the 8th house, where we connect to a greater sense of understanding. Okay? And so the 8th house is about diving deep into the emotional and spiritual aspects of ourselves. After a divorce, it offers a unique opportunity to heal, transform, and rebuild. And so by embracing vulnerability and letting go of old attachments and working with the themes of power, intimacy, and transformation, you can emerge from this experience not only healed, but more empowered and aligned with your true self. Okay? All right, and so that's what I have for you in this video. And so if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate you. And so my intention is to help you to navigate your divorce recovery with more clarity, ease, and grace. And so if this resonated with you, please share your thoughts below. I love to support you further in the comments. And if this video provided you tremendous value, then give it a like and share it out with another divorcee that could use some guidance and community while navigating her recovery. Okay. Now, if you want to continue to learn how you can use the natal astrology healing method for your divorce recovery and to be a part of the Understanding You University community, then make sure you subscribe and click the bell so that you get notified when I upload new content to the channel. Also, don't forget to check the description for additional tools and resources such as my ebook, From Breakup to Brilliance, the Natal Astrology Healing Method, which teaches the first 3 practical steps of the method, or if you want to book an energetic calibration reading, if you want more guidance outside of the content that I provide on the channel. Okay? All right, and so until next time, remember that possibilities are endless. If you can think of it, then you can definitely have it. And so that should make you smile because you're the only one who can give it to you. All right? Have a good one. See you in the next video.